Mike, welcome to the show, man. Why don't you tell the audience a little more about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I am an AI filmmaker, storyteller, and fitness goer, coach, kind of doing a little bit of everything. And from the East Coast initially, northern New Jersey, currently located in Southern California, and just trying to make it work, trying to figure out how to tell stories and make dreams come true. As corny as that sounds.
Yeah. Well, let's dig there because I really wanted to talk to you about all of that. Kind of what piques your interest into filmmaking and then led into the AI filmmaking in the start.
Yeah, I mean the filmmaking. I studied film over in New Jersey. I got a BFA in film, and I quickly realized that a degree doesn't necessarily teach you how to tell stories. That's something that we all do on a daily basis. We all tell stories, and it's really having that innate interest in telling stories. Which is, I remember as a kid watching like Spider-Man in the theaters, with Tobey Maguire, and then I'd walk out feeling like, oh, this is dope. Like I can do that. I feel powerful in having that connection with the character on the screen, and then started pursuing that throughout high school and college. Then fast forward to taking the plunge and driving cross country 2,500 miles to LA and being like, okay, I want to pursue this because this is the promised land, or so I was led to believe, and quickly realizing, wow, this is a lot harder than I thought. And there was a period of time where I'm sitting in my friend's mother's friend's basement. We were living in this Croatian woman's house in San Pedro, California. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to pursue this. I don't have any connections. And I'm watching YouTube, as one does, as they're crashing out. And on my feed is this Fallout New Vegas. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that video game, but there's this video game called Fallout New Vegas. And there's a character in the game who's like very religious. And for some reason, I just felt called to watch this video of him talking about this sermon or whatever he was speaking about in that video, and I click it, and he starts going off on something that I know is not in the game. And I'm like, what is happening here? Like, he's going off script. And it's like this character is kind of, just like I said, gone off script. And so I'm looking into it, and I come to realize that the creators used AI to recreate his voice and then program it to say whatever they wanted. And now he's giving like these 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes speeches in the character's voice. And I was immediately hooked. I'm like, I have to figure out how to do this. And so I reverse engineered it. And that was kind of the first step into the whole AI film space, just out of curiosity. And then from there, I just started making videos. And that was probably almost 2 years ago now. And we're over 150 videos in at this point. So it's been quite an interesting, kind of spontaneous journey.
No worries. Looks like I wanted to ask, so 150 videos in, where does that start? So you reverse engineer it. You get to a point where I imagine you figure out, okay, now I can take whatever character I want, start ripping some scripts for them, and then start churning these out. But where do you start there? Are you posting to YouTube? You doing like social media? How are you kind of putting these out? And then what's the process look like for that?
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. So I had taken a million courses, one of which was YouTube growth course. And so
Okay.
I went through that course with the knowledge that I was learning from reverse engineering these videos. And then I put out 33. I made 33 at once. When I say at once, it took me like a couple weeks. But I made 33 videos, batched them all. And then I was releasing one a day. And so, and then I forgot about them. So I started with the one character, Joshua Graham. I then put them out, and then I forgot about the videos entirely and was at the time working at an Amazon warehouse. So working in the warehouse, contemplating moving back due to the reality of the struggle of living here at the time. And then a couple months later, literally maybe a month and a half, 2 months later, I come back on and I have like 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And so then I replicated that with a couple other characters that I felt drawn to. I did one, Dr. Manhattan from the Watchmen series. I did one from Guts and Berserk, this manga series. All these nerdy things that I dig.
I know Guts.
Talking about struggle and endurance and all these different themes that I really resonate with. And then all YouTube. And then I find this guy putting out these AI trailers, these 1950s AI trailers. And I'm like, this is cool. So then I started ripping those. And pretty soon, I'm getting like 500 subscribers a day on YouTube. And I'm like,
damn,
this is wild.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And this was like back last April 2024. And I was like, well, I got to start making more. So I was putting one out a day, and I was just cranking. And then I quickly realized, one, I don't know that I like this format. Two, I'm just ripping these videos out, and there's not much quality. There's not much care to the quality and the storytelling. And then the market's starting to get saturated. More and more people are doing this. And so the process for that would typically look like come up with an idea or find like a verifiable working idea, and then create a narration script, create a shot list, and then go through, generate all the images in a program like Midjourney, go in and animate all the images in another program. We're a bit in the Wild West right now still, with all these different programs you can use, and then go in and manually edit them all together, add the voiceover, create some music, export it, create a thumbnail, upload it. So it is a pretty intensive process. I think there's a misconception that it's just AI, you just press a button. Each video is taking me several hours at the minimum.
Yeah.
And so that was what the big broad overview looks like for that process. And then it's just been kind of transitioning since then and playing with different platforms. I took a little break for 6 months and then came back to it. And so it's been interesting really trying to navigate the whole creator space as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so these videos that you're initially putting out of the characters, are they shorts? Are they 10-minute, medium sized? Are you going longer than that? What's the length?
I was shooting for like 10 minutes, YouTube.
Okay, damn.
Yeah. And the early ones with the characters, that was relatively easy because I would just loop the video and then create the voiceover and then just throw that in there. So those are pretty easy to make.
Yeah.
The trailers were a little bit more intensive because you got to edit on the beat. You have to generate different shots for every video. Whereas with the characters, I can just generate a voice and just throw it over, just new voice, just generate, throw it over. And then I got really quick at doing that. The trailers were a little bit more intensive. I could only get it down to 3 hours of video, which is still relatively short, but when you're doing 1 or 2 a day, it kind of adds up.
Yeah.
And then I'm at the gym and I'm editing at the gym and I'm like, I probably shouldn't be doing this. So it just kind of quickly became a bit of an obsession.
Sure.
What was your goal when you decided that you wanted to do that? Were you trying to, what were you trying to figure? You're just testing and playing and trying to figure things out, or were you just working on your storytelling, or what was the objective when you got into this?
Well, initially with the AI stuff, because this has happened to me once before with Instagram back in 2018, where I identified a gap, and I was like, if I can leverage this, I feel like I can get successful with this. And a lot of times it's a mix of curiosity and then just material interest. I'd love to get followers. I'd love to make money with this. And that is something I've always kind of had to learn how to integrate that relationship between the two. How do I quench my creative thirst while at the same time make either a business out of it or make enough money to support this as a serious venture. And so, but initially, to answer your question, it was just curiosity. This looks really cool. I don't see anybody else doing it in this streamlined kind of factory output way. How can I mesh the two together and create some sort of synergy between them?
Nice.
Yeah, so while all of that is going on, you're building this insane following rather quickly, right? 500 followers a day, that's pretty massive, especially on YouTube too, subscribers. Are you looking at any way of monetizing at that stage? Are you, how are you going about that process of turning what was your passion project into something that would generate income?
Well, that was the hard part because I mistakenly thought that that would be a forever thing. Like, okay, this is my reality now. I will be getting this many subscribers every day. I got I remember getting a check from YouTube for $1,000 and being like, out of a month's worth of content, and be like, well, I'm a YouTuber now. I'm doing this full time. If I can do this, and if I can just increase my output by like 2, making $2,000 a month, and then I just slowly build up. But the reality is the market got very saturated, and then the next check was like $200, and then it went down to like $40, and then now it's like I'd be lucky to get anything. Mm-hmm. And then the well dried up, and so I was, I hit 13,000 subscribers, and then I was like, well, I don't want to make the trailers anymore. I've made like 70 trailers, and I'm tired of making these trailers. Everybody's making the trailers now, and mine are getting like 1,000 views as opposed to like 200,000 when I started. So what do I do now? And so I didn't really have a plan in place. I didn't really take it seriously as a business, and I kept jumping from like trend to trend. So now I was like, all right, I'm done with the trailers. I'm going to try this cool looking shit now. And then I'm going to try this one. And then it quickly kind of alienated my audience in a way. They're like, we came for the trailers or the motivational content, and now you're just making all this AI slop. So my growth started going down. And now I'm at a place where I'm thinking a lot more intentionally and long term about where I want to take this. Because one thing that I've always been guilty of, and Tyler, we've talked about this, is like the woman in the red dress, the Matrix metaphor of like, oh, that looks really cool. Like, let me pursue that, and that looks sick. And then before you know it, before I knew it, I'm just completely pulled in all these different directions, and I'm not moving forward in any of them. So that's what happened.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point or a term I want to talk about is like that AI slop, right? What is your take on that? And is that just because people are making the garbage all the time, and that's what's getting pushed out there, and then now it's making the people who actually do want to do this and make good content a lot harder? Or like, I guess, and really what I'm trying to figure out is for you, like, how have you navigated that and actually have to like get more direct in how you're building your content?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a couple facets to that. And I think first and foremost, it's such a new thing, and it reminds me of, there's been several times throughout history where this has happened. Like the internet, when the internet came about, when digital cameras came out, everybody, when photography came out, and filmmaking in general, like 100 plus years ago, everybody started freaking out and saying, this is terrible, this is going to ruin everything, this is not here to stay. And then it was proven that this was here to stay. This is the new medium. And the question becomes, I believe, less of like, this is ruining everything, and more so, how can I integrate this in my current workflow, my current process, to complement my work instead of let it do everything itself. And so initially, and I still get it, like, this is AI slop, you're killing this, you're killing like our business. I get a lot of those comments, and I just try to approach it with empathy and compassion. Like, that's not my intention. I'm just trying to use this technology and like leverage it right now, because I feel like this is a really good time to kind of get in and learn as much as possible and build something, and use it as a tool. Because as I said earlier, like, a lot of people think you can just plug and play with this stuff. When I made an ad for someone recently, and I spent like over 18 hours on this like 30-second ad, like, I was really trying to make it good. And so the client or whoever can see it and be like, oh, this is AI, and it's easy to just dismiss it. But it's like, no, there's certainly a human touch guiding it. It's not yet at the point where it can read my mind and I can storyboard mentally and then it will put it together. We're not there yet. And so I look at it like that. And so forgive me if I kind of went off track here, but that's kind of how I've been mentally approaching it. Like, okay, cool, this is something new and exciting. Let me leverage it now while it's early. And then, forgive me, what was the other part of the question, Brandon?
I was just trying to figure out, like, so your take on AI slop, and then two, what is, and you're talking about it already, is how are you navigating the idea of making sure your content is differentiating from that? Oh,
yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what was happening was it was looking so bad in the beginning. So it was like there was like 7 fingers on a person. There was like 3 eyeballs. Like, it was looking so out there that it was just like, yeah, this is just AI. This is slop. But now, as the technology is getting better and better, if I were to go back to one of my earlier videos and then remake it now with like the current models, it's going to look night and day different. And so it's getting to the point, it's not quite yet indistinguishable from human video, but it's getting really close. And so now I have people seeing this and being like, oh, this is awesome. Or sometimes I have people say, like, I didn't even know that was AI. And so we're getting very close to that. So for me, it's just a matter of trusting the process and being like, this stuff's just going to get better and better. Let me learn right now with where it's at, and trust that I'll learn the skill set to like really fine tune it as it goes, as it gets better.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if anybody who's listening has not done any AI image creation, just try to create an image for yourself because you'll learn like very quickly how hard it is to freaking make anything that's like real or valuable. You know what I mean? I think there was one time I was like, oh, I have a picture I just want to edit, and I threw in one of my own pictures. And I was like, I just want to remove something from the background. And it freaking turned the whole thing into like a cartoon AI thing. And I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. You know what I mean? And so there's like, I think it really is a skill that you have to figure out and understand like actually how to prompt it. So like checking out some of your videos, it's the way you're able to get those things. It's like, that just doesn't come from a one paragraph prompt that you wrote.
Yeah, and I think it's more so, I don't really know if I like the term AI artist per se, but more like AI filmmaker or even like a creative director. It's like if I'm presented with like 4 different generations, because typically you can control the amount of outputs you get. So it'll be like 2 image generations or 4 video generations or what have you. Then I can go look at the options and be like, all right, well, I like this one, but then it does this here. If I change the prompt, then it will give me this. All right, let's try that. And then you're really just kind of tasting things and then going through and creatively selecting, like, this one looks the best. And that's just like the generations are like 8 seconds max. And so it's like, all right, that's 8 seconds right there. I'm going to cut the first 2 seconds off. We'll use the last 6. I'm going to edit that with this. And so in that way, you're more of this creative director as opposed to like someone, you know, going in and painting something. I'm more like being offered these selections based on my prompts and how I ask for things, and then piece it all together.
Yeah, I love the argument I'm hearing nowadays too, especially from artists out there that are really concerned with AI and how, I don't know, a lot of what I hear is they don't think AI will ever be able to be creative. They don't have that creative aspect to it. I think it's pretty funny. People that are scared of using AI, I hear this a lot with some of my writer friends, some of basically anyone in that creative space, is that it doesn't have the human touch, which certainly can be the case, I suppose, if you're just giving it a 1-sentence, write me a story about X. But the people that aren't actually using it as a tool, like you said, and like actually curating what's coming out and editing it and taking it as a starting point and iterating and exactly how you're describing it is just like using it as another tool in your toolbox. It's almost, I go back and I would love to know when film transitioned from actual real film where they'd have to cut and edit it and stitch it together by hand, when it transitioned to digital, were people this like distraught and saying like, oh, what you're doing isn't as artistic as me doing it by hand because you can do it on a computer. Obviously that is a big jump from that phase to that phase. It took a while to get there. Whereas I don't see why there's so much pushback, and would love to get your opinion of why you think there's so much pushback in the artist creative community for this. It's just such an amazing, powerful tool that so many people aren't leveraging.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things there, and I think a lot of it is derived out of fear of being like, it's a bit of fear tied in with like this. What was the concept, like this sunk time cost of like, I just spent like potentially decades learning how to do it this way, and now you're saying you can produce the same result in like 5 hours, like or less. Like, I think there's a lot of fear with that, and so then it's like kind of this egoic protection of like, well, it's never going to match the human capacity to do this. When it comes to editing and all these things, I think it's really algorithmic based in a sense, and I don't mean to say that I'm like all for the AI taking over and like no. What I'm trying to say is the way I look at it is it democratizes filmmaking and it removes the gatekeepers, because I have all these cool ideas that I really like to explore. But I was trying to get into an agency for the longest time. I was sending resume after resume. I was trying to get people to meet for coffee. I was doing all this stuff, and I couldn't get in the door. And now, a little bit longer afterwards, now I can look back and be like, oh, this is how I would have done differently. Or conversely, I spent all this time and money in film school. If I were starting over now, I wouldn't have even gone to film school. I would have just started making YouTube videos and gotten a job to support myself in the meantime. But I can't be mad at that because I just didn't have that information at the time. So now I feel like it blows down those barriers, those walls, where if I'm somebody who's working a job, but I have all these really creative ideas, and I want to be a filmmaker, and I want to make cool things, I can literally shoot with this camera, this little monitor camera I'm using right now, a scene, and then I can use AI to change the background. I can turn me into a cartoon character. I can turn myself into like a bear, and change my voice, modulate my voice, and do it for almost no cost. Where before that would have been impossible. And so I want to empower people to be like, if you learn how to use these tools, you can make something really cool. And then it becomes a more of a competition of ideas as opposed to using the software. Because anybody can do the videos that I'm doing, but can you think the same way that I can? I can't think the same way you can. You two guys have your own set of ideas. If you make a video, it can be awesome. I don't know. But now we all are kind of equaled out on the same playing field. That's how I view it. And I don't have to compete with these giant studios or be, see somebody else getting favoritism due to nepotism or what have you. And I'm not saying that I've never been guilty of that in my own context, but I really do think it democratizes things and makes it a lot easier for people. And so that's how I view it. And there was a lot of fear when digital came out, and there was a lot of fear when photography came out, because now the portrait painters of the day were like, well, shit, now what do we do? But there will always be a desire for that kind of work. There will always be a need for it. It just becomes a new thing. Like, I would still prefer like a handcrafted painting over like an AI generated painting, because I know there's been a lot of time and energy poured into it. I think that's one of the arguments. It's like, well, you're putting so much into this craft, you're spending all this time and investment. And in a sense, when you pour your time in, you pour your soul in to something. And I think a big argument is like, well, AI doesn't have a soul, so therefore how could it create something as unique and nuanced as the human experience, which in many ways is full of mistakes and imperfections in almost all ways.
Certainly.
How much do you think your background in film has helped you with your thoughts and ideas of actually being able to create these videos? I wonder that too. Is like you have a very like unique perspective where I don't think a lot of people are necessarily in film per se, right? And so you're able to have some better guidance on how you can actually get a full product out.
Yeah, I think it helps in the sense where like I know that certain things need certain shots. It's like, okay, I know that I need to get coverage here, that a wide shot might look better for this as opposed to a close-up. I think it helps in the logical sense. But there was, previously the greatest film of all time was Citizen Kane. And that was made in 1941 by Orson Welles, who's my favorite filmmaker. And, excuse me, when he made that film, think about this, that was the greatest film of all time for like 60 years. He had never made a feature film before that. And the cinematographer he worked with, the guy behind the camera, specifically wanted to work with Orson Welles because he didn't know anything. And so I think that actually knowing too much, in my case in some ways, has actually been a hindrance more than it has been a blessing. Because when you study the art of filmmaking, right, it can sometimes confine you more so than thinking outside the box. And so one thing that Orson Welles later said was like, you can learn everything about a camera in like a day and a half. And at first, similar to our previous discussion about this, I felt some resistance. I'm like, well, I spent 4 years like learning this stuff, and like Like I got this education. I analyzed films in film analysis class, and we studied all this stuff. And I really think back, and I'm like, actually, you can learn a ton in a shorter period of time. And so I think it has been helpful, but I think more so what's been more helpful is the passion for telling stories. And like sitting there watching movies, I would bring like a little notebook to theaters and like take notes. And people thought that was weird, but I was like, I want to learn how to do this. So I think more so the passion is contagious, and that has been more of a propellant of the work that I've done than the formal education.
Nice. I never would have. That's a great point. Where you have if you have more education, that you're kind of like you're almost like funneled into a way of thinking. I never even thought about it like that, especially for something like a creative field, like the one you're in, right? Because I think for like personal experience, right, is like you being in like a STEM related field is like you have to learn like the structures, like you have to learn like how for me it's like how data works and what are the formulas and how do these like things actually work, and so then that way you can have the tools. But in a creative sense, right, it's totally different, where you actually you might get forced into a box and have to actually think out, and now you're fighting to think outside the box to create the ideas that would make you and have your touch on a film. That's really interesting.
And I mean, just to quote the Matrix again, like in the movie, the Oracle says like there is no spoon, and so it's like there is no box. Like, but sometimes schooling teaches us that this is the box, this is all the stuff. When it's like, well, who created that? And so I think the role of the creative and the storyteller is just to ask questions and be like, well, what if we did this? What if we approach it this way? And so that's one thing that I've always been guilty of, is asking questions. And so I think that it's helpful, especially in the creative space. And in STEM fields, I'd imagine that there is boxes, there is structure. You need to have that because there is proven ways of doing things based on like what we're working with. Whereas with the creative space, operates a little different.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would push back just because in the STEM side, I totally agree. Like, I think one thing that's helped me, especially with integrating AI into my workflows and some of these IDEs that you can use in the coding space, I think having the classically trained computer science background is I will always be able to orchestrate architecture, design a better piece of software than someone coming in without the CS, and we both have the same AI tool. We will be able to produce very working objects, right? But I will just the knowledge of what it takes to actually put together software, coupled with the ability to put AI to do it for you, is going to give you that extra edge. And I would imagine that is still somewhat the case in filmmaking, right? Like if I came in, you helped me a lot in the content space when I initially started of, hey, like get the wide shot here, get some close shots here, like understanding these terminologies and like the actual components that go into making a film. I'm sure it's something you, in every concept across all spaces and in an industry, you figure out as you do more and more, right? Just repetition is the only way to learn. But yeah, I would push back there just because I know for in the STEM side, and I'm sure even your film side, I would say having the core concepts understood allows you to excel faster than someone that doesn't. But I think you are correct where if you follow too closely to the line you were taught, you can find yourself getting into those, like pigeonholed into those boxes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I don't mean to. I'm not trying to backpedal by any means, but it is important to know. I guess more so, what I would clarify is like, I don't know that studying. This is one of my regrets, is like studying 4 years of filmmaking was necessary.
Sure.
Even when I went to film school, my parents and everybody was like, "This is a bad idea." And I didn't know. I had the hubris and the naivete to be like, "Nah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pursue my dreams." And that's important as a kid, to have. But I wish I had a little bit more measure and tact, because a lot of the stuff in the creative space, the theory you can learn by watching some films, by watching YouTube videos, by really just practicing in real time.
Yeah.
There is, of course, no way to shortcut lived experience, but I do think studying people who have made those mistakes already and then learning from them and trying not to make those mistakes is helpful. And again, this is only the creative side. I think I think you really need to go to school if you're trying to be a doctor or someone who's trying to do these things, or you're not trying to be creative when you're doing a surgery. You're just trying to really help the person. So I want to make an important distinction there. But yeah, it's certainly helpful. And I mean, even if you look at someone like Picasso, like he learned how to do portraits and painting like the traditional way at the time, and then he just kind of evolved through iteration his own style. And so in a sense it is helpful to learn the traditional way of doing things, the learned way, so that way you have something to work off of and you know how to get creative with the evolution of your process. So I think it's maybe perhaps it's a mix of both. I'm not saying that there's any definite way. Just in my experience, I have noticed that it's been a little constrained, and I wonder, like, if I didn't learn this, how would I think about it? Like, how would I approach it? And maybe in that there's more freedom. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just knowledge, right? Either knowledge through being taught or just knowledge through repetition and self-teaching. But yeah, with that, like, what are the best engines right now? Like, break down kind of the leading competitors that you're using in the whole process, right? So if there's different tools for different steps, like, what are you using and what do you recommend?
Yeah, so I would say right now, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's like the Wild West in the sense that there's all these different programs, and if you're not careful, you'll be paying like $400 to $500 a month just using all these different programs. And so, which still is cheaper than like a Hollywood production cost.
Sure.
But where I'm at, I look at a couple different things. You know, you have we break it down into different areas of filmmaking. So you have your video generation, you have your image generation, you have your sound. You know, let's just say that for the time being, we won't talk necessarily about like post-production editing. I just edit in Premiere Pro. But there's CapCut, there's all these different engines and programs you can use. But in terms of just solely the AI space, I was thinking about this, and there's 3 that come to mind for different reasons. I think the most potential is Runway ML for video production. Like, just how they're moving and the new features they're rolling out. Like, they just rolled out this Runway ALIF, which you can change the background of videos and change elements in the video, is incredible. I mean, we can just take this recording right now and just be like, change the background to a sunny day, give us all like snapbacks, and it'll do it, and it's freaking awesome. So I think that one has the most potential for like long-term application. In terms of video generation, I really like VO3. I think that's the highest quality VO3, Google's VO3, and I think just the big reason is they just have so much money they can pump into it, money and talent and resources, and so they just have a massive head start. So VO3 is incredible, and a lot of these other programs are using VO3, and so you want to be mindful, because I think one of the most marketed programs is Higgsfield AI for UGC content creators. However, I tried it out for a month. It was like $50, and I made like 3 generations of video generations, and it ran through like 95% of my credits. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me! And it uses VO3 as an engine. So I'm like, why would I go through all this if I could just go right to the source? But I think they're the most marketed. They have a really great in-paint feature where I can take like a product image. I can take this microphone, and then I can paint over it, and then replace it with something entirely different, like a different microphone, or like whatever. If I want to put like a fucking pool noodle here, I can do that. I think that's a really great feature. So I think that's the best marketing of the companies. But I would certainly, I always usually lean towards Google or Runway for video generation. Image generation, Google's also very good. They have the Image Gen 4, which is a great program I've recently started using, which is awesome. However, Midjourney is just like so awesome. Like I think Midjourney is so cool, and it's one of the first ones in the space for image generation. And I just really like their functionality. And now they're introducing video as well. It's not quite to the level of Runway or Google, but I'm really curious to see how they progress. And then sound has really become dominated, I would say, by 11 Labs, and that is voice. So voiceover work, cloning people's voices, making entirely new voices off text prompts is one feature that I certainly use. And I'm really excited because previously for music, you'd have to use a program like Suno or Udio, which are great programs, but now 11 Labs has just introduced a music feature. So I can create voices, and I can create music and sound effects all in 11 Labs. So it's like, okay, now we're starting to see the competitors dwindle. And this is what's going to continue to happen. I predict over the next couple of years is like companies are going to fall off. Like, some of these startups are going to fall through. I just got an email from one I was using for lip sync. That's a whole different thing. And they're no longer doing lip sync. And so now it's like, okay, they're falling off. Now another competitor is going to take that spot. And so, long story long, I would say Runway, Google, 11 Labs, those are like and Midjourney are like kind of the programs that I'm leaning towards as I work on subtracting from my stack and really trying to be as cost effective as possible.
Will you layer your content in between those? Like, will you give Midjourney a output from, was it VO3 is what it's called? Would you give those together, or are you mixing, or are you going to just take step by step what you need and then stitch it together on your own?
It's usually use case based. So it's like I did a commercial recently for a client, and I used a couple images from Midjourney, and then I animated them in Midjourney because they were really quick insert shots. And then I used like VO3 for the model speaking and things like that. And I actually liked the voice they created, but then what I could have done is use 11 Labs to change the voice. And then I'd have to go through and do some like MP3 conversions and like kind of add it to the edit, the new voice. I could have done that, but it was pretty consistent. So yeah, you can kind of play with it depending on what you're trying to do. You might even be able to use Midjourney for all of them. I was working on like this analog horror series. I made like 6 episodes, a minute long. And I was like, I want to just try Midjourney video for the whole thing. And so I did the whole thing with Midjourney, created like 50 to 75 images, animated them all in Midjourney, and then just edited them all together in Premiere. And it came out pretty good. It was actually the most viewed video. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So it's really just been a constant process of testing and iterating to see like what works. And then I might use Runway for a bunch of stuff. And like, let me try that one. And I have my qualms with all the programs because they're all based on credit systems. And it's like, if you're kind of strapped right now, you don't want an extra couple $100 a month coming from AI programs, it is important to be like cognizant of what you're spending because very quickly it adds up. And one thing I didn't really touch on, but like you can make it a video and it still looks like AI. And you're like, I spent so much time on this, and that's when image upscaling is now a thing. So then once you create the images, now you have to upscale them with another AI program. And then you edit the whole video, and you got to upscale the whole video with another AI program. So that is kind of the one challenge, is people think it's just like one and done. It's like, no, they're using like 7 programs. And each of them I'm spending like a ton of time and money on. And so that one ad that you're really like, this looks so easy, like make me one. It's like, yeah, it took like 10 hours, bro, and like probably cost me like $50. So, which is cheap, but it's still like time. And so it's interesting.
Yeah, what I wonder about AI in general is that like the talks about how it's almost like this like AI gold rush, right? Where everybody's starting to use it, everyone's figuring out new ways to use it in their own sense, right? And like the way I use it, the way Tyler uses it, the way you use it, Mike, it might be all different because we have different use cases for what we're trying to work on. And an interesting concept that I'd heard about is like thinking about it like the gold rush, where everybody's running to go get gold, right? And instead of, but like where do the people, or where like you can consistently make money and do things.
Sell the picks.
Sell the picks, sell the shovels, sell the gold pants. And so what does that look like? And so that's something I'm curious about, is like, because you're talking about like you have all these different areas of where you're going to pull through to pull your final product. Is there like, what kind of things would make your life easier to be like, if I had this would make, I would be able to, this would like maybe cut my time in half or cut my costs in half or whatever it is. That's where my brain starts going with this stuff, because sometimes I just don't think I have the creative nuance of like being able to like think out like a whole video or a film of like what I'd want to do. I'm like, well, if you could actually like just be the connector and put them together, what could you do with that? But so anyways, the question was like, how would you, if you were like, I guess like what is there like, what are like the pain points in trying to figure out how would you streamline your workflows to say if you're spending 10 hours on a video, what would it take for you to try and drop that down?
Well, I mean, it's a couple things, and just to touch on one thing you mentioned, which I thought was interesting because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, is it is certainly the gold rush, and there's a ton of people selling shovels, and it really annoys me because I'm seeing all of these. It annoys me in the sense that there's a lot of Instagram creators that I follow or watch, and they're selling all these ad courses on how to make AI ads or AI videos. And they're probably raking in a good amount of money doing that. And that's something that like is really tempting for me. It's like, well, money has been my challenge in the sense of like, if I had more money, then I'd have more time. And if I had more time, then I could make more videos. And so even like Walt Disney was struggling with this when he was starting off. He went bankrupt a couple times, and he's like, we make movies so we can make more movies. We make movies so we can make money so we can make more movies. And so it becomes a cyclical process. The challenge I see is you have all these creators who are selling shovels, but to me it's like, where's their proof that they've found gold? And a lot of them, I don't see the proof. And so it's like, where's your client testimonials? You're claiming you make $10K a month off AI ads. I don't see any of your client work. I don't see any of your testimonials. And you're making these really flashy edits suggesting that, this is, like, I mean, it sounds like a hypocrite, but this is creative design. This is not AI and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you just press you type in a good prompt and you make a good image and you edit it. Like, it's simpler than people make it out to be, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. In terms of so that's why I'm trying to take a more nuanced, long-term approach, because I have been guilty of being like, I'm going to sell shovels. And this is not tooting my own horn, but I grew 13K on YouTube. I grew back in Instagram, like in 2018, I grew like 50,000 followers in like 3 months. It was different then, but I was like, now I'm selling a course on how to do it. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, this is a different business model. Like there's a lot of people that do this. I'm going to make money teaching people how to make money. And it's like, well, okay, I don't know. Just where I'm at right now, it's like, let me figure out how this works first, do it, have the proof undeniably that I can do it, and then maybe at a different point, with a different business model, I'll start educating people. Because I already have people asking me, how do you do this? Like, teach me how to do this. And I'm like, I really want to, but that's a woman in the red dress right now.
Yeah.
That's something I've been guilty of.
Facts.
It's like, all right, now I'm going to stop doing my videos. I'm going to teach you how to make videos. By the time I'm done teaching you how to make videos, the industry's already gone, and now I'm like way further ahead. And so to your question with the 10 hours, I think it comes down to a couple things. And it takes me longer because I really do care about the final product, and I want to make it good, and I want people to enjoy what they're making. And so like at the moment, I'm learning from Alex Hormozy on business, but I'm trying to like refine and make sure that people who are watching the videos are content, because I learned my lesson of making a bunch of shitty videos, and now it's like, okay, let's spend enough time to make it to the point where the client is happy and that they enjoy it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be my standard. I want to make it my standard, but sometimes I have like way too high of standards where I'm like, okay, now this is taking over my life. And so I have to really iterate that. And so it's been a kind of a challenge in that sense, and how do I streamline the process, but making the workflow as efficient as possible, and then just changing the nuances based on like the client feedback has been helpful for me.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about that client feedback right now, what does that feedback loop look like for you?
Well, it's like you typically ask somebody like, okay, what videos are you inspired by? What do you like in the case of ads? And like, is there any ads that you resonate with or that you're inspired by, and then they'll show me some. And I'm okay. I kind of know what direction they're going in. I'm making one right now for a mustard company, and they showed me some like ads that are really like kind of funny and interesting. I'm like, okay, so they have like a really cool sense of humor. So like I tend to resonate with that. I like that sense of humor. So I'm going to try to make it funny for me. And what I'll typically look at is like if I react viscerally to the video, there's a good chance the audience will too, because there's something about that it's kind of unexplainable, but I made this edit and I just started like laughing. I'm like, this is hilarious. Like I think it's really funny. And then the client found it funny too. And it's kind of like, I don't know how that works, but it typically works that way. And so then he's like, all right, can we just change this? This shot looks a little blurry. Can you change this line and the last line of the video? And I'm like, sure. And so now I'm going through and I'm making those changes. And then I'm going to send him another draft and then see what he likes. But one thing that I've learned is like, if there's a problem or a mistake that I see, they're definitely going to see it too. And so it's best to just fix it immediately instead of just trying to like roll through it. And like, they're not going to notice. Like, never underestimate the audience, both from like a client business owner perspective, but also when you're telling stories. I think that's one of my big critiques for a lot of movies in the last 10 years is people, about these filmmakers or these companies will dumb things down or just repackage things thinking the audience isn't going to notice. The audience is really freaking smart. And so they want stuff that's smart. It doesn't mean it has to be, really highbrow, like Criterion Collection smart, but like don't underestimate them and don't think that they're not going to notice when you do something, when you try to take a shortcut. And so that's typically what the feedback looks like, is like, let me take the time now, measure twice, cut once, make it as good as I can make it, see what they think, how I can adjust things. And sometimes we're human, and that's the kind of the human part of this whole AI process is like, I make a mistake and I don't even notice it, but they notice it. I'm like, oh shit, okay, now I got to go back and fix it. And now I'm like, okay, well, what can I learn now so I can make a better video next time, or how can I avoid that going forward? And that's kind of where the data comes in, just the volume, the repetition.
Yeah. And what's the business model? So I guess maybe let's transition into the business side of things here. How are you doing client outreach? How are you attracting clients? What's your process there?
I'm still figuring that out. But I listen to what Alex Hormozy says. And going back to shortcuts, I'm already catching myself trying to take a shortcut. And with this, I'm treating this like any other business, like he would. And in particular, let's talk about the AI ads. It's not what I want to do forever, but that's my current focus right now. And so the first 5 clients I got were all like free, complimentary. And I went through my list of warm leads. It's just a person I know. And I went through Instagram, my contacts in my phone, and I just hit up some people. He says do 100 every day. So I did 100. I think I did 25 and 50 one day. I did over 100 in total 1 week. And from that, I got like 5 people interested. And I just asked, hey,
good hit rate.
Do you know anybody else who might be interested in like an AI ad for their brand or company? And then as he suggests, someone's going to say yes, me actually. And I offer it for free and exchange for testimonials. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 5. I have 3 done right now, and I'm doing 2 more. The third's almost done. And then I have 2 more that I'm working on. And then the next batch I'm going to do at a discounted rate. And then the next batch, another discounted rate. And so that's kind of the business model right now, to build up my portfolio, my testimonials. And then at a certain point, we'll be at full price. And then I'll do a batch at that price. And then I'll start scaling up that way. That's kind of my current plan. And it's proven to be harder than I thought. But it's I'm just really trying to remind myself this is the long game, and something that Tyler, you've kind of instilled in me. Like, hey, right now I'm not seeing much growth, but 6 months from now, who knows where I'll be? And like, the hard part is the TikTok brain has made me and everybody else believe that this should happen in like a week. Yeah, and it's like it's not how we want to do things. Like this, I'm trying to treat this like a business now, and so let's build it. And if I do 30 clients before I'm charging full price, that sounds crazy to me, but that's just the reality. By the time I'm done with the 30, I'm going to be really freaking good at this. And then I know I have undeniable proof, similar to personal training. When I first started training people, I'm like writing everything down, like I'm freaking out, like I don't know what I'm doing. And now I can go in without a plan and be like, I know exactly what we're going to do. And I have that confidence because I have the proof and the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of times when it comes to business plans, I can't say a lot of times, so this is kind of the first time I'm really doing this a legitimate way and trying to figure this out. But I'd imagine that it comes down to confidence in what you have to deliver and then just sticking to the plan. You know, I love the Hermosis, and Layla always says, like, fuck your mood, follow the plan. Yeah. This is my plan. Now I have to just stick to it and not get distracted. And that proves to be the harder part.
Yeah. Building the skills first. I think that's the big thing, right? You build those skills, and then what me and Tyler talked about too is that if in the process of doing everything that you're doing, you're also going to learn things that don't work. And those lessons are just as valuable as the things that do work. But you only do it by doing the reps, like the reps. You just got to get the reps.
Almost more valuable, man.
Yeah, straight up. So
and like, it's reps and it's just rejection. I mean, most of the clients in my personal training business, most of the consultations I have, I get rejected from. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, you know, it is all reps, whether it's business or relationships or what have you. It's just getting rejected constantly until you figure it out, and you've done enough volume to be like, okay, like now I have options. And one thing that I think about what Alex Hormozy says is like, if you have enough leads, you'll never go hungry. And that's really what it comes down to. If you just can reach enough people, whether that's through in-person, knocking on doors, cold calling, email, data, whatever it is, through whatever you have, you'll never go hungry because you'll always have that volume to pull from. You'll always be able to get those reps. That's something I have to remind myself. Just like if I'm struggling, it's because I don't have enough leads, I don't have enough volume. How do we fix that problem?
And there's like the sales aspect and just the pure numbers game, where if you just got to keep on reaching out, keep on getting the leads, or not even the leads, because the leads come after you agree, right? But it's yeah, you got to really just knock on the door, send the text, send the emails until you get a certain number of like kickback. I just think about that from the people I know that work in sales, and it's just like, dude, you just have to call 100 times. You literally just have to reach out, and it's like you just consistently just nope, not interested, nope, not interested, nope, not interested, until you get the one or two, and then you can roll with it.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, I saw this video of this guy a couple months ago on Instagram who was like cold approaching women on the street, and he got rejected every time. And then it was his 81st approach, and this beautiful girl was like, "Yeah, I'll go on a date with you." And it was like, damn, it took him 81 tries to get it, to get a date with some girl, right? And so it's like, but the challenge mentally that I think a lot of us have, and I have, is like, if I knew how many tries it would take, then I would do it. The problem is we don't know how many tries it will take. And we have to just have faith, whether that's in God, in your process, whatever it is. I feel like the faith is the biggest part. And so much of the time I talk about it's you versus you, I've come to realize that it very much is you versus you, because you're going to go through that, and I hope I'm not going too much into philosophical stuff, but you're going to go through that lonely chapter, which is I'm kind of experiencing right now, where a lot of my friends don't understand what I'm doing. My parents don't get it. And everybody wants to be supportive. I'm grateful for that. But they just don't know how to be supportive because they don't know what's going on. And I don't even know what's going on. And so it's having the faith that, like, eventually I'll get through this. I have to just not be distracted by the mental doubts and thoughts, and just trust in either a higher power, in my case, or the process I've laid out and the numbers, that something's going to work eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think the biggest doubt comes from?
I don't know. What do you think doubt comes from, Tyler?
No, go ahead. My biggest doubt? Ooh.
I can start with mine. I think we kind of hit on it a little bit. I think there's a level of, like, when it comes to starting something, it's like you put yourself out there, and you become vulnerable with whatever you're doing, and it's like you're putting your work on the line. and then there's a level of like rejection there, right? Where if it doesn't work, there's like, damn, that shit didn't work, and it's like, and that hurts, and like there's like that almost, and then can transpire into like a fear of rejection, where now it's like, okay, I don't want to feel like that, and so then that's where the doubt comes from, where it's like, well, if I don't want to do that, if I don't want to feel like that, then that's what would hinder me stepping into it. And there's a constant reminder for myself is to be able to let go of that and know that, you know, you have to try things if you want to ever learn anything new or step into a new path. So personally, I think that's where, like, sometimes when it comes to, even for us starting this podcast, it was like, what, like it was like the fear of like rejection, and that's like, that became that doubt that you constantly have to step through. It's like, and I have to step through that all the time, reaching out to people to be able to jump on with us. It's like, oh, well, they could say no, right? Or it's like, oh, nobody listens. That's people in a way saying no. But it's just getting used to it, and that's what I feel for me is like that biggest doubt. But interested to hear what you guys think too.
Yeah, I think for me, I was just giving this some thought. I think my biggest doubt is that if I fail at this opportunity, there's not going to be a next opportunity. Right now, I could relate that. I was trying to think of like what in my life I have had self-doubt in, and I think initially the first thought came up with this project at work that I've kind of been thrust into a leadership position for, and the doubt essentially is, if I can't deliver and perform on this one, will there be another opportunity where I'm given the trust to lead another one? I'm trying to relate that to other aspects, but yeah, I think that's my biggest doubt is if I don't knock it out of the park on the first try, there's not going to be a second, which I think is also a driver, to be quite frank. I think it's a driver for me to work harder to make sure that stuff is getting done on opportunities that are like that. There's probably some self-toxicity in there of maybe that not being the correct mindset. But yeah, I would say that's my biggest doubt when it comes to new things and new opportunities.
Yeah, man, there's a tremendous amount of responsibility in that, and it is to your point too, Brandon. Like, trying new things is scary because you don't have anything to compare it to. It's something entirely new, and like the reality is we're not going to be good at it if we're new at it. And I think for me, it's always been like that kind of performance thing. Like I've never done this before, and I really want to be good, because if I'm good, then that means I'm. To me, it's been tied to self-worth. If I'm good and people can see me as good, then I'm inherently valuable. And it's been more so of like, okay, like, well, being vulnerable is always going to be a part of it. And I have my own thoughts on like dating always comes up for me in this regard, or business. Like if I'm not inherently materially valuable, or I'm producing results in my business, then how is that tied into my view of myself and my self-worth? And so for me, doubt has typically been tied. Where it comes from, I think, is ultimately insecurity and fear, in the absence of confidence and trust. That to me is where I believe it stems from. I mean, everything I'm sure could be tied back to like the fear of death in some capacity if we go further back enough. But I think in my case, what comes up for me is like, I kind of, when I decided to move across the country, not knowing anybody here, or having any connections or a job or a place to live, it was the uncertainty and the unknown, and then treating it like a rite of passage of sorts. It was always in stories that time, or in tribes, where the boy is thrust out of the tribe, and it's like, go survive, and then come back once you've proved yourself. And now you come back as a man. And so we don't really have that in our modern American society. And so in many ways, I've tried to create that for myself. And I feel like doubt has been part of that. It's like, can I make it? Can I return with the proverbial elixir Joseph Campbell talks about in The Hero's Journey? Can I return with something of worth and value? And that to me is that doubt, is always that question. Like, have I done enough? Which I think is a question a lot of us ask ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of us at our stage right now, right, is that we won't know these answers until we figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Or which I think that's like the trap of sometimes this thinking where you're trying to figure, at least for me, right? I try to figure these things out, try to like really like self-analyze and be honest and truthful of like the situations and like how, like what I'm trying to think and what I'm trying to do, where I'm trying to go. But at some degree, it's like we just have to take the next step forward, and you don't really know exactly what it is yet, but you just have to do it, and you just take the next step, and you take the next step, and then hopefully, and as long as you're taking the steps in the way you want to go, that you'll end up there. And it might not look exactly what you thought it would be back 5 years ago, but I'm sure that like even where we are now is that like you can look back and be proud of the fact that of where you are right now. Because I think for instance, there's plenty of things in my life I could be grateful for that I've realized. Wow, I used to pray for these moments and be in the situations that I'm in, you know. And even now it still feels like, oh, well, I don't have this or this, don't have that, and I'm still trying to get to here. But I think that's just like a continual process where you just have to keep on keeping on.
Yeah. It's that, I think it's Hormozy quote of what you had yesterday, what you said would make you happy yesterday, you have today. It's this is a concept me and Brandon knocking around forever, at least the last couple months, is like, Mike, and I wanted to bring you in on this, is how do you balance that having drive, ambition, wanting more, right? You're doing so much with like all the different ventures you're trying out. How do you balance that with also being taking a moment to congratulate and be proud of how far you've come?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that because I haven't sort of done that much.
Don't worry, neither have we.
It's,
Yeah.
I've tossed that idea around in my head all the time. Like, I need balance. I'm craving community. I'm craving intimate relationship. And then it's just like, even to what you were saying before, Brandon, as you were speaking, I was like, well, how do you know when you figure it out? Because it can quickly become where it's like you're working out and you have this goal and you get the six pack, and you get what have you, and like, well, are you even aware of it? Like sometimes I like hit those goals and then I'm like, so quickly I'm like, okay, now I gotta hit that one, and it's like, well, how long? Wait, what happened there? So like, yeah, I don't really know what balance looks like. It's something I'm trying to explore. And one of the pieces of advice that I got from a founder that that I know, at least on like an acquaintance level, is like take a day off every week and completely unplug and just do something else. And well, just one day out of 7, perhaps that's a way to start. And one thing that I know for myself is like, I was journaling about this morning actually, like when do I feel most proud of myself? When do I respect myself the most? And for me, what came up was having a plan and being true to the word that I keep with myself. So if I say that I'm going to work out 4 days this week, doing that, and this is my plan for the week, doing the plan, that's when I feel most proud of myself, is when I am true to myself. When I say I'm going to do something and then I do it, even if no one else is aware of it. To me, that's what honor and integrity means. And so having that within myself has proven to be the most, I don't want to say worthy way of celebrating that, but like at least of acknowledging like, hey, I'm making progress because I'm doing what I said I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys approach it, but
those are insightful questions to ask yourself. I think those are good things everybody should ask themselves. You learn a lot of your self-perception, and then that gives you the guidance to be able to step towards where you want to go. I think a lot of times it's really easy just to stick to the you just day by day, and you just don't really think, and you're kind of just like floating through just the monotony of work, or the monotony of like this is like your routines and stuff like that. But getting those kind of questions answered for yourself allows you to guide where you want to be, and ultimately guide your next step.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's what do you do when no one's watching? Talking to like being a man of your word, Mike, and like where you find the most pride in yourself. I would tend to agree with that. I think when I check off everything on my to-do list for a week, that's when I feel actually accomplished and it's finally time to rest. Um, Unfortunately, those to-do lists for the week get very long when I make them the week prior. Uh, but yeah, it's interesting. And in today's society, I mean, with so much, I want to get your take on this too, Mike. With like so much sedation that's happening with society and like video games, like just the cheap dopamine hits. So you have like the video games, the Instagram, the TikTok brain, vaping, gambling, porn, like all these things that are just like basically suppressing people's desires for more. What is your take? 'Cause I feel like it's so easy to stand out by doing these self reflections, and just having like a few side things that you're working on. But wanted to get your opinion on that. Of do you think it's an easier time now than it ever has been to actually stand out amongst the crowd?
Yeah, I do think so, because it shouldn't be, but I think it is because there are so many distractions. To again, quote the metaphor a lot, the Matrix a lot. Use a lot of metaphors from that. But like, there's a constant sea of women in red dresses, like all the time, whether it's TikTok or what have you. And in my case, I really struggled with porn a lot of my life, and I've tried quitting on and off. And there's been periods where I've been successful, and right now, like I've been doing very well with it. And that's been a very conscious process of being aware of like this thing's grip on me and how I can free myself from it. And then when you start asking yourself these questions and you start subtracting things from life and you find like-minded individuals like yourselves, or I was part of a men's group for a couple of years of guys who we'd meet weekly and we'd do these things that we do in-person retreats, and we start going inward, asking ourselves these questions and pushing each other to be a man of our word and have honor. And when you start doing these things, even if it's just, I don't want to say even, but if it starts with just, hey, I'm going to abstain from porn, I'm abstain from fapping, I'm abstain from watching TikTok, you quickly find how lonely you become in the beginning because so few people are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was in my early 20s and I was like, hey guys, I don't think like fapping and like watching porn's like good for us. And I don't know, but that's my thought. And my friends were like, dude, it's totally normal. And I was like, really? Okay. And then you just go along with it because that's like what everybody else is doing. And then as time goes on, I've learned to like form my own opinions on things and be like, wow, actually, I don't believe this, 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 and this. And like the more I subtract from my belief systems, the more I subtract from my potential friends and then partners, because most people don't operate in that way.
Yeah.
And I've had some conflict with people where I'm like, I hold them to the standard I hold myself, which may at times be unfair. And compassion is probably an important part of this, but I'm like, you said you were going to do this. You haven't done it. Now I've lost trust in your ability to follow through on things. And then I've been met with like, I lost a friend recently because of that. I'm like, this is something I've noticed you've been doing. And I don't mean this out of a personal gripe or attack on you, but this is affecting my ability to trust you in our friendship. And I'm not asking for an apology or an explanation, but I care about you, and this is just an observation I had made. And then that was met with like some hostility. And I understand, but I was just like, oh, okay, well, now I can't hang out with people like that. Not to say like, I'm not going to hang out with you because of this, and you because of this, but it's like, I'm going to carry myself a certain way, and either we're running in the same direction or we're not. And that's, I think, just kind of happens organically in a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of groups we hang out with. Like maybe we're really into COD, and so all of our friends play COD and like smoke, and then quickly like, I don't want to do that anymore. And then you stop hanging out with them because now you don't have that similar interest.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of how it's played out for me.
Yeah. And it's not to say that one life is better than the other. I mean, you only have one life, so live it exactly how you want to live it. We had this conversation in our last pod, like everyone dies at some point, so make the most of your time, whatever brings you the most happiness, joy, fulfillment. Live the life you want, but don't let others pull you into a life that you don't want to live. That's super important. But it's very interesting too with the concept of like holding your friends, like everyone I think holds their friends and others to higher standards than they hold themselves. So for instance, if you had a friend and every time you guys made plans they showed up 5-10 minutes late, you'd start to think that, you know, maybe they're not as good as a friend as 5-10 minutes late. That's not a big deal, but they show up an hour late every time. You know, they're bailing on plans that you guys have made. You're probably going to start associating that this isn't a very good friend. But if you do that for yourself, if, hey, I made plans to go to the gym today and and you just don't go. If you stop showing up for yourself, you don't make that same distinction of this person's not meeting the standards that I would want to associate with. You don't hold yourself to that same accountability. A lot of people don't. I think this people on this call probably have come to that realization. It's a hard practice to instill and keep up, but yeah, it's something that a lot of people do.
It's hard. I mean, that's a great point, because it's important to stop and pause and ask oneself, like, is the thing that I don't like in this person something that I don't like in myself? And to what you just said, it's like, if they're always late, like, where in my life might I be showing up late or not being true to what I said I was going to do? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I do find, like, oh shit, yeah, I do the same thing. And then it's like attracts like, and we are flowing the same way. And so because I'm not showing up for myself, they're not showing up for me. And so in many ways it kind of starts with ourselves. And like, okay, got to get myself right before I can go and expect anything else of others.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things too, I'm sure we can all to attest to this. I don't know. In life, when you're working towards a goal, what I've come to find out in the last 6 months is when you surround yourself with people that want that same goal, you are propelled at such a faster rate to achieving that thing. Whereas on the flip side of that coin, you have people around you that aren't trying to reach that goal, maybe pulling in an opposite direction. It's much, much harder to reach it. It's much harder to reach a goal when you're like, hey, sorry, I got to stay on this Friday night. I have a marathon coming up in a month and I have to go hit 18 miles on a treadmill. And your friends are like, yeah, but we're going to go hit the bar. We're going to get some beers. We're going to watch the football game. It's going to be a lot harder than if you have a friend who goes, yeah, I have a marathon too. I'll do 8 miles with you on that and I'll push you for half of it. I'll pace you for it. And then in the middle of that, you also have the lonely chapter where you don't have friends that are going to pull you back, but you also don't have friends that are going to push you forward. And being self-accountable in that moment is quite difficult as well. But surrounding yourself with people that were going to push you towards that goal or aligned with your goals, it propels you so fast. Things start moving at rapid rates.
And how would you say that you find those people? How either of you experienced that?
I think it's, you got to live it first. I think it's, you have to live it. And until then, you don't give yourself the opportunity to be seen by the people that are already doing it. And because if you just say, I want to be the person who runs a marathon, I want to be the person who is physically fit or whatever it is. If you're not going to the gym, you're never going to find the people that are also going to the gym, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the first start, is you have to do the thing that you're trying to achieve, right? And just taking those steps to be there first. And then after that, then you can start actually looking into finding different communities, joining different, maybe it's a club, maybe it's a group, and then you find those people. And then once you find those people, then you start to build connections within that. like for me personally, like I just got into triathlon this year, and it was, I had to first, I couldn't go on a bike ride with people because I wasn't good enough on the bike yet, right? So I can't just go with them, and all of a sudden now I'm gonna get left behind because I'm just not, my legs aren't strong enough. So that's the example I'll use. I first had to build the endurance, right? And then now that I'm strong enough, it's like, okay, I can actually ride with this group of people who've been riding for longer. And now we can go together, and we can do that. And that's what I might do on a Saturday now, is go on a ride. But I couldn't have done that with the people I've done that without actually taking the first step of just, this is what I want to do, and I have to actually work for it to do that.
Gotcha. No, it's important. I think that kind of ties into that lonely chapter 2, and this is something Chris Williamson talks about. Is like, you don't yet have the skills to be with that next group of people yet. Like you're different than your past friends, but you don't have the skill yet to match your next group of friends. So to your point, it's like you didn't know how to ride the bike. You couldn't ride the bike, and so you had to develop that skill on your own to the point where you could now like ride with these people who were better. And then now it's like, oh, now I'm one of them. And so that's interesting.
Yeah. And I think there's other things in life too that's like you strive for, like, because I think it's an easy comparison when you do that in like a physical aspect, right? When you talk about like a physical task, like if it's a bike, if it's a run, if it's just getting into the gym more, there's a very like tangible thing that you can do. But I think what's more challenging, at least for me personally, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think, is when it comes to, I don't know, like building something, building a business, building like this podcast, for instance, right? It's like, I feel like that's more of a challenge because there's not like the same, it's not as linear in the sense of like, if I want to become a better biker, I get on the bike, right? Versus when it comes to building a business, it's like, well, you need to learn sales and you need to learn how to communicate with people. You need to actually have a structure on how you're gonna put something. You need the actual product first, or the service, or whatever it is. So there's so many more aspects, I think, that where it's, you try to learn those things, and maybe it takes longer, or maybe there's different ways to do it, and maybe they're not like synonymous to each other. But that's something that I feel like I'm very much still trying to figure out, of how you actually take the steps in the right way to build something that you're trying to like, that you want to have that's like lasting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's all intentionality there, B, right? In terms of surrounding yourself with people, like you said, in terms of the physical aspects, it's really easy just to find people to hop on the bike, and like you have your community that's biking, right? And then in terms of the business aspect, I think it's just intentionality of like when you meet people that are doing cool things and actually taking steps that's like, oh, this guy's doing something different than the crowd, of being intentional of inviting them to coffee, inviting them out to do something. If they're into endurance sports, invite them for endurance training. If they're into lifting, go get a lift in. This is something, this how me and Mike became friends, is at the gym. Obviously we're going to the same gym, see each other around, but then we started chit-chatting about both doing the influencing fitness, trying to build a following to eventually launch products from. And while we were both going sort of different directions at the time, I think Mike pivoted into the AI, obviously, the AI filmmaking on social media, trying to build the following there, and then client base of selling the ads and everything. And then my path was more so build the client base to do the fitness coaching or one-on-one life coaching. We saw that, okay, well, there's synergies here that can be worked on, right? And so then we would sit down for coffee, go over, okay, what's your plan? How are you going about the growth aspect? Comparing notes, taking advice on, hey, I'm doing this. It seems to be really working. Should try it out, and vice versa. But I think it just all comes down to intentionality. If like when you meet someone that is doing something that you would like to incorporate in some aspect into your life, is making an effort to actually build a relationship there. That's the other thing people don't realize, because a lot of our friends are lifelong friends, right? Like, or friends that we formed in college, where you're thrust into competitive sports, or you just grew up as neighbors with somebody, or you were in the same fraternity where you're kind of in these groups that formulate bonds for you. Not a lot of people have the experience when entering the real world of going out and actually building those relationships, but it does take a lot of effort to just build them from scratch without something overarching kind of forcing people together.
Yeah, a lot of them are circumstantial kind of friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're just in proximity, and we're under the umbrella of this structure, whether it's the frat or the school or the neighborhood. And then when you get to your real world, well, I got to make my own thing because no one's going to kind of organize it for me. And so you meet people at the gym, or you maybe do podcasts. I don't know. You meet people there, and then I feel like you just kind of pick up people along the way. Like I had a client of mine who we did a whole couple months together, and we don't train together anymore, but like we're friends. And I'm like, yeah, dude. Like I watch his dog when he's out of town, and like we hang out like occasionally, or whenever I see him at the gym, we'll chat, and it's like, yeah, this is just someone I resonate with, and it's like to the point I made earlier, like it's kind of organic. You have like these like kind of meeting places, and you just kind of organically become friends, and there's something just innate about that. Because when we were kids, it wasn't like hard. It was like, you want to play together? Yeah. Okay. And now we're friends. And like I still feel like that's in its foundation the same, but now maybe you're working, you have more information to share, you have more value to provide, but there's always this underlying like theme of like play or curiosity. I feel like it should be innate.
Let me ask you this, Mike. Is there a experience in your life that stands out that changed the perspective you have on life?
Yeah. What comes to mind is, I was on another podcast with my buddy a couple of years ago, and I shared a story there too, and I thought that I met, and this is going to be very vulnerable here in sharing this, because this is like a really interesting one, but I thought I met this girl in high school. I did meet this girl in high school. I went to prom with her. I thought she was like the one. And so it didn't work out, and it was kind of like this cinematic type of like story, and I wrote a whole screenplay about this relationship. And I spent like 3 months, 12 hours a day, learning how to write a screenplay. I got all like screenwriting for dummies, and I was sitting there, and I was 18, and I was writing the screenplay, learning how to do this. Like, how does this work? How to take this movie from here? And it was almost like an act of desperation. I'm like, if I show, at the time it was like her parents, the screenplay, they will think that, like, they will know how important this is. And there was like kind of this naive like hope, and also this thought like it works out like the movies portrays it as. Like the guy works really hard, and then it will go in his favor. When I was met with the reality, like, this is not how it works. And it didn't work like that. I finished the screenplay, and I was like, well, at this point, like, time has moved on. I can't show up at this girl's house with a screenplay and be like, look at my love. Like, it doesn't work like that. And so I put it away, and I was like, all right, in a few years, I'm gonna pop it out, and then, like, maybe it'll work then, right? And then so a few years later, I did actually end up meeting up with this girl, and we were just different people. And I had never considered the fact that, like, we change, and that what was once a connection or a fit might no longer be. And it's still something I think about, because I see this person on like social media, and I'm like, I don't know that I would even be interested in this person now. But I was so convinced when I was 17 that this was like the one, right? And so, and I've come to realize that not only when like intimate relationships, but also friendships, we're talking about friendships and like connections, like it may not always be like the same. And if you are somebody who has drive and ambition and are constantly pursuing growth, I do feel like it's beneficial or helpful to align yourself with other people who feel the same way, but to also know that it still might not work. Sometimes things just don't work. And as much as I want to analyze them and like question them, like sometimes it just doesn't work. And I think of this Office episode where like Dwight talks to Ryan, and I remember the context, but I think he says something along the lines like, Ryan, sometimes you just fail, and there is no lesson. And while I don't want to necessarily say that it's failure in this context of relationships, but sometimes it doesn't work. and there's no rhyme or reason. It just doesn't work. And that's a big thing I think has been an unfolding lesson that was kind of planted by that experience in high school, where I was like, I look back and I'm like, wow, man, that was really cool that I did that, that I thought that way. I don't think that way now, but I think that was kind of cool that was the version of me who thought that way. And now I'm somebody different. And it's kind of look at that version of myself with compassion and know that, like, maybe 10 years from now, I'll look back and be like, wow, I think the same thing, maybe in a different situation. And it is kind of exciting to think like that.
Yeah, that's vulnerable. I appreciate you opening up on that. I think it comes to the point of, like, Chris Williams makes this point of, if you're really good at growing, self-improvement, and consistently trying to, like, meet your higher self, the final Super Saiyan form, if you will, right? There's going to be this trajectory on life where you can think of it as like a rocket ship taking off. And some are going to be moving faster than others. And the friend groups that you have, you might start pulling ahead of them, or friends that you have, rather. And then you'll meet other people. And the idea is that you want to meet people that are moving at the same velocity. But what you'll find out in life is, a lot of the time, if you're doing it right, you keep moving and keep going and accelerating and going faster and faster. And so you left this group down here and you finally met this group up here, and you're like, yes, finally I met my friends. And then you go, oh fuck, I'm still going. Yeah. And it's just the cyclical nature of, unfortunately, what I think is called life, of growing, evolving, and changing, and just trying to live it as best you can. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's also just accepting the change too, right? Is that in the moments, it's you I don't know. We've talked about it a little bit already, but when you're in those moments and you're there, it's like you might really want that for yourself, and you really want this aspect, but you need those lessons, you need those experiences to be able to shape the person that you are now. And like for like your story, Mike, is like how much you've learned from like that situation that happened to you when you were 17, right? Is like and it gave you so much more perspective that you probably in that moment would have never even thought of, right? It's just that all you wanted in that moment was to be able to like get the thing that you wanted to get, which, or like the relationship, right? And it's like, but then hindsight's always 20/20, but you now have this perspective of that, that that it's okay that you're able to, that those things change. And that's something I really relate to too, is that there's been so much in my life recently where it's like feels like things are constantly changing, and things are and there's just new perspectives that you learn and new things that you want to achieve, and that allowing yourself the space to allow it to change instead of holding on and gripping on so tight. Like a good analogy that I've heard, and I really try to live my life by this, and this will get a little bit more like religious, because that's where I see that's like how I align. But I envision like my life as like, or I try to, I'm not always perfect in this, it's like an open palm, right? Where I have an open palm so that when God puts things into my life, whatever it is, a job, a hobby, a relationship, whatever it is, it's that it's there. And that in this moment I get to hold it and it's there. But if I try to grip it and it gets pulled, and God needs to pull that away from me, how much stress and things I put on my own life when I'm holding it grip like that. And then it causes problems, right? Versus if I just always view it as the open palm, God gave me this, now He can take it away. And what does that do? It created space here to be able to put something else there. And that's been like that's how I really try to view my life a lot in times of change. And I only learned that because of going through times of change. Is that like the harder I try and grip on these things doesn't mean I get to keep them. It just makes it harder for me to let go of it. Anyways, all that story just to, as I relate to where you're at and what you're talking about, Mike, there is, and that's just how I try to go through those moments and those experiences.
Yeah. I mean, have you guys? I mean, I love that analogy. I've never heard that before, but I'm gonna remember that one. Have you guys seen the show The Chosen at all on Amazon?
Two seasons of it. I haven't watched the whole thing.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
I haven't.
I just started watching it, and it's amazing because I was raised in the Catholic faith, and I went to Catholic school like all my life until like 12th grade, and I just kind of felt a little like I got a little disenfranchised with how it was being taught, and like kind of removed myself from it. But I found myself like just naturally gravitating back towards my relationship with faith and God, and I started watching the show because my friend kept talking about it over and over again. I want to go home and watch Jesus show. I'm going to go watch Jesus show. And I'm like, okay, all right. And then so eventually I started like just naturally drifting towards it, and then I've been watching it. And it's amazing because, you know, with what you're saying, Brendan, just watch this episode of like Simon going to like go fishing, and he's like desperate, and he has all this like debt he's got to pay, and the Romans are going to come take him, and he's like cursing at God and like, why is this not working out for me? I've been fishing all night. Like, this is my last chance. I got to make it all right. And then, long story short, like he comes back to shore in the morning, and Jesus is on the shore like teaching, and he just tells him like, just cast your net out right here. And he casts his net out, and he just catches like 2 boats full of fish, and it's more than enough to pay off the debt. But he could never have seen that coming. He could never have predicted this moment, but he was so full of fear and gripping so tightly to physically the net, but also metaphorically a situation, thinking that he could fix it all himself. And that's what I often find is if, like, how much am I trying to force situations, whether it's relationships or business or interactions or clients, like how much am I trying to force the outcome? Whereas a lot of times I've had to try to remind myself, like, just relax your grip to your point, and like let go, and like, let's just trust that it'll work out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's controlling the controllables almost. Like, what you can only be concerned with what you can affect. Everything outside of your control, you need to just let go and leave up to how it falls. Much harder said than done. I think a lot of what I find myself thinking of is, if I try hard enough, I can change an outcome, right? Like, I contribute all outcomes to effort put in. I'm a very analytical person, so it's very, if you put in X amount of inputs, you should get Y amount of outputs type of deal. And I envision this a lot with relationships, with job, with just pretty much anything, is if I try hard enough, I can force that outcome to occur. But unfortunately, there's other variables other than X that go into that formula that you have just zero control over and might have more effect on the outcome than you would suspect.
Yeah, definitely. I've been there. Where it's just like, I'm doing all the things. I should be producing XYZ result, and then someone gets sick or something happens that we could never have predicted.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh shit, now what? It's like, to your point, Brendan, like just having that open palm, I think is awesome. It's just like acceptance. What is our relationship to acceptance? And this concept of wu wei, of like non-forcing, of like, it's like the art of sailing as opposed to the art of rowing. And sometimes we have to just let the wind do its job, and just try to steer the ship as best we can, and just realize it's out of our control entirely.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal that. Art of sailing instead of the art of rowing.
Yeah, that's I can't take credit for that. That was Alan Watts. But
I like Alan Watts.
It's one thing he says, because I remember he has a book called The Age of Anxiety, and he talks about that. Is, when we try to force, we try to row against the current, we try to push, and if we just let the sails do their job, we just kind of flow. And it's really knowing when to flow, when to push, when to when to move, when to steer, and being kind of congruent with like that cyclical process. Because when we have that, when we feel resistance towards anything, I've learned to really trust my gut, my intuition with it. I've come to realize if I'm forcing it, it's not going to work. Like it's just never, it has never in the past worked when I've tried to force something. And so now, whether it's a client or a relationship or what have you, I'm like, if I'm forcing this, if I'm going overly putting too many inputs in, like, it's just not going to work out. But when I kind of sit back and I'm like, hey, this is what I have to offer. Here's what I'm doing my best, and then people can feel that. I think that really resonates. To kind of call back to with the client, if I feel like this is funny, they typically do too. If I feel like this is like a relaxed interaction, they typically do too. And so the only thing I can really control is like how I'm showing up and like what I choose to accept. And it's hopefully we can find some middle ground. And if not, maybe there's a reason for that, but I can't see.
Yeah, I think something to add too is that in the times where you are going with the current, right, that's when you really push. I think because you don't want to like never have. I think there's a level of like drive and desire that's very like useful, right? But using it in the way that will actually like propel you to where you want to go. Cause that's something I just go back and forth on constantly. It's like, well, I'm putting in so much, like you said, Ty, if I put in so much effort, this should be this. And understanding where to direct the effort on where the actual path is at. And if you're going in this way, let's push. Now we can really hammer down and let it go for those things that are going to be like fruitful and be abundant, and then we go. I still think there is like a healthy level of drive that's very important. That if you don't have, you can get caught up in those limbo states where you're just flowing with the wind, and now there's no direction, right?
Yeah, maybe it becomes less of like maybe it becomes more about learning how to read the sea as opposed to trying to control the ship. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm trying to like verbalize it. It's like knowing when to row, knowing when to rest, knowing when to let the sails, and becoming just a better, in this metaphor, sailor or seaman than it is trying to control. Because like, yeah, to your point, like I feel like when you find that path you're supposed to be on, like, oh, I feel the current. Now I can just like let it take me a little bit. Oh, no, now it's slowing down. I got to row a little bit. Like, oh, I'm getting tired. Maybe it's time to rest. So it's becoming a more seasoned captain or sailor and knowing when to read those ebbs and flows, when to move, when not to move. Maybe that's more of the immense life, probably, just becoming a more experienced person. But that's, yeah, because I feel like you know when you're on the right path, at least in my experience. Like, okay, like this, I feel like this is the direction to move in. And then you go down that path, you choose that road, and there's still going to be times where like the fog appears on the way, like over the sea, and you're like, well, I don't know what direction I'm moving in, but this is the right path.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, nothing lasts too. To your point, it's something I've learned is when you do have those gut feelings, oh, I'm on the right path, like that mountain, that high that you think you're on, like, oh, life's so good, like this is flowing, that is not going to last, just like the valleys won't last, right? Just like when you're in your deepest moments of just depression, sadness, and just everything's gone wrong, just like those won't last, and you'll get through that and come out of that valley. Same thing with the mountain, where you think everything's going correctly, I know what I'm doing, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. That too will not last forever. There'll be confusion and self-doubt that creep in, of, you know what, maybe I was wrong, like maybe this is changing this way. But like you said, it's just understanding where the tide, the current's going to bring you, knowing when to row into it, when to sail against it. Something that if someone had the answer, they'd be a billionaire from selling it. But unfortunately, everyone's got to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And I think we just build the awareness.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's part of life, is just going through the experiences and figuring it out, and we'll learn things. We're gonna make mistakes, and but then we have the chances to do the right things the next time. So,
let me ask you this, Mike. Are there any authors, podcasters, philosophers, people in general that you've read, listened to, that have shaped your outlook on life?
Yes. There's a couple. I mean, I would say podcasters. I've always been a fan of the Joe Rogan podcast. I like his curiosity. And lately, you know, Chris Williamson, Alex Hormozy's been a big inspiration in terms of business. In terms of more like philosophers or thinkers, the Alan Watts. I'm getting more into Carl Jung and like philosophy. In that regard, people again who just are curious. I've always been really fascinated by those individuals. Orson Welles, in terms of filmmakers, artists, and yeah, I would say learning more about individuals, or even right now, like Jesus. I'm learning more about Jesus and like how he operated and interacted with the world. And so those individuals are what come to mind right now for me as people that have influenced my thought. Naval Ravikant's another entrepreneur that I like to listen to and pay attention to. And so I try to find outliers in thought processes and ways of thinking, and those guys tend to do it for me.
Yeah, I'd recommend, if you haven't listened to it already, Alex Hormozy just went on the My First Million podcast.
Okay.
Are you aware of that podcast at all?
Yeah, I think I listened to one episode a while back.
They're good. I throw them in the rotation every now and then. They'll have a couple good guests on, some good stories. They do dive a lot more in specifics of business, with just how their guests that come on, how their business formed. And they get like a little more into, it's not like super high level business concepts, but it is more than, I guess, what we would get into, Brandon. But anyways, yeah, it's
sure.
good. The Hormozy episode is out there. I haven't given it a listen. I think, Brandon, you have, right?
I'm like halfway through. It's good. I would definitely say it's one of those things where there's a lot of value in it, but then you have to actually like really sit down and watch what they're doing. Because this one is actually like they always film, but this one they're actually like drawing out notes and things like that, and talking about like there's a lot of business terms that go over my head that I have to like research and understand what it is, like actually building like business models. Because you know Hormozy just released that, or he's releasing that new money models book.
Yeah.
And so he's actually like going through some of his some of like the material in that book and actually describing it in different business aspects. So it's really interesting in understanding like business models and how they actually work. And something for me, it's cool because like I'd never been exposed to those kind of things before. You know, outside of just like personal like interest. These are like the only things like, oh, like, this is how this gym actually gets started to make money. It's not just, oh, go get a gym and put a bunch of equipment in there and let people show up, right? There's actually a lot more nuance in how you can actually make it to be profitable. So that it's really interesting, and I like that podcast a lot. I listen to probably them. They come out with like 2 or 3 episodes a week. I probably listen to 1 or 2 of them of the 3, because I just think they've really changed like my outlook on understanding business and even just things in general. And I'll call back this one interesting thing that they talked about is the dad. They're both dads. One guy, he's sitting in his daughter's dance recital, and he started doing like napkin math. And he's like, how much does this place actually like pull in? And he's like, well, we're paying $300 a month. That's just for our fees. And then we have like the privates, and then we have all of her like the outfits that you have to buy. And then we had to pay $20 a ticket for this recital, and my grandma's not going to miss the recital, or her grandma's not going to miss the recital. My wife's going to come, her siblings are going to come, and so now we have all these people. He's like doing that. He goes, this lady's pulling in like almost $1 million a year, right? And so all that to say is like those kind of thought processes on different everyday things that you might not think about is why I enjoy listening to it, because it makes me think differently about just what's going on around us that you just don't think about. Highly recommend that podcast. I like it a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. That sounds sick.
Yeah, they changed one of my day-to-days B2. I think you watched this episode or we've discussed it, is the everything's a business. So like now anything I look at, I always go, okay, how are they making a business behind that? Like if you're at the doctor's office and you see this poster on the wall of this is how a kidney operates, and someone makes $1 million a year printing those posters and getting them into doctor's offices. And same thing anywhere. Just go at the store the other day. I'm like, the strawberries are in this, like always in the same plastic container. Like the farmers aren't packaging that. Like they're getting the plastic container from someone else. Someone else is producing that. It's all like, there's the unsexy businesses now stand out to me, like fucking glowing red signs everywhere. It's
because
a
of that
cool
podcast.
Yeah, because of that pod. Yeah.
Super interesting though.
Mm-hmm. So what's outside of all the different pursuits and chasing women in red dresses, brings you the most fulfillment in life?
Brings you the most fulfillment in life. That's a good question. I don't really know if I have a good answer for that. I feel most fulfilled, honestly, when I'm working on something that I care about, which is, I know it's outside the scope of pursuits. That is a pursuit.
Yeah,
but,
like purpose almost.
Yeah, I feel a great sense of purpose when I am doing what I like to do and then influencing people as a result of that. And so even when I was doing the fitness Instagram thing for a couple months, people still like, well, I'll meet at the gym, or mostly at the gym, and they'll have now been making content, and then we'll talk about it, and they're like, yeah, you inspired me to do it. And I wasn't aware of this. I didn't even know they were watching me. And when they say that, it is kind of like, oh, wow. And I have to, like, that's pretty sick. It's pretty cool. Like, that I inspired you by doing the thing that I wanted to do in the moment. And so that, I think, brings me a lot of fulfillment, is knowing that sometimes when I think that I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just taking this shot in the dark here, it is influencing people and inspiring them to make a change in their own lives. And so it typically comes in the form of doing some sort of work for me. But I'm trying to look at it more as like a sacred practice of like fulfilling my purpose through telling stories, whether that's making the fitness stuff or like the AI ads, what have you. That's fulfilling my purpose, and I feel the best when I'm doing that. And so, yeah, at the moment, that brings me the most fulfillment is doing that. And then the goal being able to do that at a very high level, and then support and share that the labor, the fruit of that labor with people that I enjoy spending time with, my family and my friends, and having the freedom to do that wherever and whenever I want is the ultimate goal.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I can attest to that day that we talked about the magnet on the back of the phone that you were filming with. That day is the day that I felt like I got permission to film in the gym because I saw someone else doing it. And then that's when I was like, fuck it, dude. All right, I'll start filming everything. I'll make the fitness account. I'll start posting all this content. So yes, yeah, Mike, you did make an impact there too with me. So cool. Appreciate you doing that, because outside of that, man, you go into the gym, it's putting a camera in front of your face when everyone else is not doing it. It's intimidating. And then once you start doing it, it's like it doesn't matter anymore. But
yeah, it's important, I think, to keep and to me that I didn't even give it a second thought. I was like, yeah, just do that. Like a lot of the things I feel like I've taken for granted is just people look at it differently. Like, I was doing a consultation with someone recently, and she was talking about how intimidated she was by everybody else in the gym. She's like, they're all doing all this stuff, and like I've been in gym most of my life, and I'm really comfortable there. And so I told her, I was like, most of them don't know what they're doing. Like, they have no clue. And a year and a half ago, when I first started working at this gym I work at, I felt the same way from a trainer perspective. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But now I can confidently say most people in the gym don't know what they're doing. There are outliers who have a plan and they know exactly, they're very intentional. And they're the ones that are the most ripped and the most jacked or the most fluid in the movements. And that's not most people. And so I know that when I told her that, there was this like breath of relief. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, they don't know what's going on. They're just like you. They're using an app on their phone telling them how many squats to do. But it looks like they do. And so just know that like you're not alone in it. And so I do feel like when we just take that perspective, like, oh shit, maybe the stuff we know, maybe the stuff that you know, Brandon, or you know, Tyler, like you think is easy, most people don't, and they think it's really freaking hard. And that just by me telling you, use this magnet, which someone told me to use, like 2 weeks before I told you, they made an impact on me, and then I was able to kind of reverberate that forward. Right? It's like, it's just if we can just spread it forward, that I think it helps everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what you guys are doing with the podcast.
That's the idea.
Sure.
That's the idea.
Mike, let me ask you another question too. What do you think people misunderstand about you the most?
Oof. People misunderstand about me the most. Well, I think this is a two-part. I think people think that I am like this reserved, introverted. I don't know if they think about me this way. I think everybody has their own interpretation of me. I think some people think I'm really like outgoing and charming and charismatic. Some people do. And you know, I've had people say like, you should do X, Y, Z because you're so this. And then some people probably think I'm weird because I don't party on the weekends and I don't really go out to bars or anything like that. And like, you know, we invite this guy out, he never wants to go out. So I wish people understood that like there is a method behind this madness, and that I want to explain it to people and share it with people, but I get so exhausted of trying to do that instead of actually just doing the thing. And so I think I'm misunderstood in the sense that what I'm trying to do, like I do have an intention behind it, and that it's oftentimes I think people misunderstand that like I don't want to. I've really actually experienced this recently where someone thought I didn't like them. They're like, I overheard someone say, I feel like he doesn't like me. Like, why is he not very like? And I'm like, no, like I actually don't have anything against you at all. Like it takes a lot of energy for me to show up, and I'm just trying to like stay in my lane and do my own thing. And so I don't know if that answers the question, but I feel like part of the path of entrepreneurship or having a drive and ambition is like, how could I expect someone to understand me when I don't even really understand what it is I'm doing, but I have a hope that it will work out. And so I think I'm most misunderstood that when people think that I don't want to hang out with them or spend time with them, when in reality I'm trying to create the freedom to do that on my own terms, and it just requires me to make a little more sacrifice in the short term that they might not really realize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said.
For sure.
Well, I think we can wrap this episode up. Mike, I appreciate you coming on, man. This is really good content we talked about. I don't know, that first half of the conversation was super interesting. Like all the AI stuff, like me and Brandon's lane in terms of the software that we're doing, like we literally work for a company that applies AI models to create probabilities. So getting the insight from you on how that's being used in the film industry is awesome. Second half, I love that stuff. I love that we can have these deep conversations. Not a lot of that is had, unfortunately, amongst friends. Not a lot of vulnerability. I think a lot of people just go through the motions with that and don't open up enough. So I'm grateful for you coming on, doing that to not only us but an audience as well, and I appreciate you taking the time, dude.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. It's awesome.
Of course, appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me on, and I really enjoy what you're doing, and I appreciate the space to share my own experience and hopefully impact and influence others along the way, as I know you guys are doing with this podcast. So thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yeah.